Hi, this is People, Places, Things, in History. This is Carol Church Gardner coming with you, and what are we going to talk about? The battles of the Civil War. Okay, so this is the Civil War. The Civil War was actually from 1861 to 1865. That was when the battle had began and when it had ended. One thing you might not know about this battle, there was a lot of women that actually fought on both sides. They dressed as men, they bound themselves up, and they went in and they actually fought beside the men. One woman was actually caught, and that she actually was the first woman to start what? She was actually the first battle nurse on the battlefields. And her name was Clara Boltner. That was the one that ended up being caught, and she ended up being, this is what I'm pretty sure it was named, and I'm sorry if I couldn't pronounce it right, but she was the first one that was actually as one of the soldiers that turned into the nurse that I just said. Another one that you might, and Elizabeth Van Lew, she was the woman spy who lived in West Virginia and the Virginias, and she was giving parties for the Confederates, and they would come in and they would tell her secrets where they were going to be deployed and all that. She would give it to the Union soldiers, so they knew exactly right where to go. She did it very well. She got really friends with all of the guys that was like high up ranking, as high as she could get, generals, corporals, whatever. She would get whatever she could out of these guys, and then she would somehow get it to the Union soldiers up here. This is how one of them that was the best spy, she was not even considered she liked the Union soldiers. Belle Boyer was another one. She got confessions out of the soldiers, and then she would somehow slide the information that she had wrote down that they had confessed to and slipped it to the Union soldiers. This was two women who were actually spies back then, guys. If you want to, look their names up on Wikipedia and it'll tell you. During the Civil War, there was family against family, friends against friends, neighbors against neighbors. This was how the Civil War was actually built. It had your own opinion. If you wanted not to have slaves, some people still wanted to have slaves. And the only casualty that ended up on that battlefield was Jenny Wade. Jenny Wade was the only one who was killed on the whole battle that was actually not supposed to be a casualty. She was a civilian casualty. They didn't have very many of them, and what happened was her boyfriend and his best friend went to go fight the war. They both had opposite opinions about the war and what was going on. So they both fought on different sides. Jenny's boyfriend died a year before. She died. He got shot on the battlefield, and then his best friend catches up with him and finds him dying, and he tells him to tell Jenny, "I love her." Jenny ends up getting shot about the same time as his friend did, like within a couple of hours. His friend dies. He gets shot 10 miles from the battlefield. This is what happened to her and her family. Now if you go to Gettysburg, you look at the Jenny Wade house. She's supposed to be haunting Jenny Wade's house. But it wasn't her house, it was her sister's house that she was put in the basement, where she died alone. After the Civil War, actually was a lot of kids with no parents, because the wife couldn't take care of them, because the husband was now dead on the battlefield. So a lot of the kids went to the orphanage. And depending on where you went, they were pretty well run the same. They were not raised very well. You had one kid bullying another kid. They wouldn't do nothing. So this is unheard of today, but bullying back in the day was actually a way of life. Some of the kids actually got hurt from the bigger bullies. Stonewall Jackson actually got friendly fired upon. He went through where his troops was. They were thinking they were the enemy. They shot him. They shot him right there. 1863. So this was one general who learned a lesson very, very cautiously. And he died from his wounds days later. This is how, when you quick fire upon, you better watch who you're doing it to. A Union general, John Segowich, he actually got shot 3 times in one battle. He got shot while he was leading his troops. He managed to stay on the horse, but days later, he got actually injured by a sniper. Okay, so they couldn't take him out with just 3 shots, so they had to get the sniper in to finish him off. Robert E. Lee was the biggest general there was back in the Union Confederacy. He was actually one that had a pardon. As soon as Lincoln seen him, he pardoned him. He's the only one that never got anything done to him. He just walked right out with a clean ace. Ulysses Grant was actually the 19th president. He also served in the Civil War. He was the one that everybody looked up to, so it's a good thing he got saved because he was president. He served his country as generals, and this guy was a big to-do one. The field medic hospitals back in the day would report that they would have so many injured they couldn't keep up. So when they would cut off the limbs, some of them didn't have anesthesia or nothing. Imagine that back in them days. Another thing, one guy was put on the bottom of the pile. He was alive. They thought he was dead. They put him underneath the pile with the limbs, dead bodies, everything. And he was found, and it was a little too late. He was a little too dehydrated and all that. He died right after they found him. They had him there for about an hour or 2, and he died from all of his injuries from the lack of care. One other thing you might not know is you've heard that Gettysburg is really haunted. And it's all over the campuses and all that. It's supposed to be haunted with Civil War stuff. One other thing I would like to bring to your attention, General Joshua Chamberlain. He was the one that dug himself in on Little Round Top. He was a one for the North. He actually dug right in, and he had his troops just positioned in the right spot where if the Union soldiers would come up, the Confederacy could shoot them down. This happened all night long or all day long, and if it wasn't for him and his troops, you would still had the Civil War days later. A lot of the battlefield people was actually couldn't be know who they were, and if you were important, they just started the embalming solution. So some of them, if they wanted their family members were rich enough, they would have them embalmed and shipped wherever. The rest of them got dug in a pit and just threw there. And one thing that you might not know is you would be unidentifiable if you weren't had things. But one guy, his wife sent him a picture. This is how he got actually seen who he was. They had the picture in circulation in every paper to see who this poor guy was. I can't pronounce his name, so I'm not even going to try. So this is one of them that actually died on the battlefield, and this is how they found out who he was and where he lived. His wife sent a picture with his 3 kids. They found it in his pocket. He died of his wounds. He got shot on the battlefield. He walked off, and he actually died in a barn. One other thing I would like to bring up is when the President of the United States, Lincoln, when he did his 7 years ago, when he did his speech, if you really listen, the only ones he concluded that they didn't conclude back then in the Constitution as having any rights was the African American people. The Native Americans were still not known. We were still called savages in that 7 years ago. We're still considered today as a savage because nobody has actually brought us out of that status. And another one would be the Chinese. The Chinese was not also brought out as being humans. Okay, so I gotta go. This is Carol Church Garden signing off. Hit a share, hit a like, make a comment, and make sure you share this and actually hit subscribe, guys. Carol Church signing off. See yous.